Okay, 6th grade math 4.5, page 193 in your book. Let me see where my board's not on. Hold on, let me turn my board on. Maybe. Alright, here we are, page 193. We have some vocabulary. We have power and exponent, and we've been doing this for a little bit. Power is like this, 3 to the 5th power. A power is something that has a base and an exponent. In this problem, the 5 would be the exponent. Okay, the 5 is what power it goes to. So what we're going to do is today we're going to talk about multiplying and dividing by powers of 10. So your key concept box, if you will look on, and you're writing this and the key concept, I noticed it's right there, so I wrote it down. Multiplying by powers of 10 and multiplying, first off, that's the name of the key concept box. So the first line says multiplying by whole number powers of 10. So here's how I remember this. When you multiply a number, when you're multiplying by a whole number, the number gets bigger. So when you're multiplying by a power of 10, you move the decimal to the right, however many zeros there are. Like 10, if it's a 10, you would move it one place. If it was 100, you'd move it 2 places because there's 2 zeros. If it's 1,000, you would move it 3 places. If it was 10,000, you would move it 4 places. Okay? Now dividing by powers of 10, or excuse me, multiplying by decimal powers of 10, I don't do the little trick that they do in the concept box, so I'm not going to have you write the second part. I'll tell you what I do when I get to those. Okay? So let's take a look at the examples. Okay, this is a power of 10. This is a positive power. It's not a decimal number, 1,000. So you have 0.05. So the trick is you're going to move the decimal to the right 1, 2, 3 zeros. 1, 2, 3 zeros. So that answer would be 50. Or you can just take 5 times 1,000, which is 5,000, and there's 2 decimal places up here, so you put them in. There's your 2 decimal places. That would be 50. Okay? But I'm trying to show you shortcuts. They want you to practice these shortcuts because the faster you can do things, sometimes it just makes it easier. Now, one way, this one right here, what I do is, especially with the 1, I forget about the decimals and I just multiply. 9538 times 1 would be 9538. And then there's 1, 2, 3, 4 decimals here, and 1, 2 decimals there for a total of 6. So I go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So it would be 0.009538. This is such a small number that when you multiply a small number times this number, it's going to get smaller. And that's very confusing because we've always talked that multiplying, usually the number gets bigger, but it's only when you multiply something by a whole number. See the difference? The 1,000 is a whole number. That's why this number got bigger. This is a small number, a decimal number, so that's why this number is getting smaller. So we move it, the decimal gets moved to the right, or excuse me, to the left on that one. So that one gets a little bit confusing. So example 2, it says multiplying decimals by powers of 10. The graph shows the number of vehicles that crossed bridges during the year 2000. How many vehicles crossed the Golden Gate Bridge? So there's our vehicles right there. There's our Golden Gate Bridge. It showed up with 1, 2, 3, 4 full cars and a quarter, 4.25. Each one of those vehicles is 10 million. So basically they're asking us to take 4.25 times 10 million. Okay, well that's a whole number, and there are 7 zeros. So you just move the decimal 7 places. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And add those zeros into your loops. It would be 42,500,000 vehicles. That's it. There's them moving their decimal. All right, so now there's a key concept box for dividing, and it does get a little bit confusing, and again, I just use the whole numbers. So remember when we multiplied by a whole number, the number got bigger. Well, when you divide by a whole number, the number gets smaller. Okay, so here's an example. 35 divided by 100. Well, remember before when we multiplied, we moved the decimal to the right. This time you move the decimal to the left. So we're going to go right here. So our decimal, we're going to go over 2 places. 1, 2. It's going to be 0.35. Okay, so it's opposite of what you do with the multiplying. So dividing by decimal powers of 10, 35 divided by 0.001. This time, since we're dividing by a decimal, we'll move the decimal. This one we move to the left, then we move it to the right. So we would move this decimal 2 places, be 3,500. No, 3, sorry, there's 3 decimal places for the number of decimal places. That's confusing to me. I really struggle with the dividing little shortcut there. So let's look at some examples and we'll see what happens. So I love the shortcut for the whole numbers. So it's just 508.3. We're dividing by 10 that has 1 0. So your number's going to get smaller by 1 place. So it's going to be 50.83. There it is. This one, the opposite. This is a decimal number right here. So we're dividing by a decimal power of 10, so we need to move the decimal place to the right because there's 2 decimal places. So 5.83 would be 1, 2, so it would be 50830. Okay, so let's do this. Let's make a note here before we do the guided practice. I want you guys to write this. There's basically 4 things that we learn. Okay, first there's multiplying. Let's make ourselves a little cheat sheet that we can look at. Okay, when you multiply by a whole number, okay, you move the decimal, I'm going to double check, to the right for each 0. When you multiply by a decimal, and these are a whole number power of 10, a decimal power of 10, you move the decimal to the left for each decimal place. Okay, and then dividing, and notice these are going to be the opposite. When you divide by a whole number, you move the decimal left for each 0, and when it's a decimal, you move the decimal right for each decimal place. Okay, so when you're going to look at the problem and you're going to decide, am I multiplying or am I dividing? Then you're going to decide, am I multiplying by a whole number or a decimal, or am I dividing by a whole number or a decimal? Then use this to help you. Okay, so we're multiplying, here's our multiplication, by a whole number. So if you look at your list, that means you move the decimal to the right, however many zeros. There's 1, 2, 3 zeros. 1, 2, 3. So it would be 6,070. Okay? Multiplying by a decimal, we move the decimal to the left, however many decimal places. There's 2 decimal places, so we move it to the left, 1.536. And I just go back to this. If you didn't write this down, you stop right now and you write that down on, it's almost like, I'm just reiterating the key concept box, but this is important. Just use this and refer back to it. It's okay to look back at your notes when you're doing your assignments. Okay? See if we got that one right. Yep. Okay, now we're dividing by a whole number. When you divide by a whole number, you move the decimal to the left how many zeros there are. 1, 2. So it'd be 0.426. And now we're dividing by a whole number, so you move the decimal to the right. Is that right? Go back. Let me see my notes. Dividing by a whole number, move the decimal left. Yep. Okay, so go back. Sorry. Back. So left would be 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. Is that right? Wait a minute, that's not right. I'm dividing by a whole number. Oh, yeah. Dividing by a whole number, so I move the decimal. Oh, you guys, I can't. Jeez. I don't know my left and right. 509. I'm moving it to that's the right. 1, 2, 3. 0.509. Oof. Maybe I should go home. Okay, so let's do better on this one. I'm dividing by a decimal, so I move the number to the left one place, because there's one decimal place. 50. Look at there. I redeemed myself. Okay, and number 6, I'm dividing by a decimal, so I'm going to move it 3 decimal places, 3 places to the right. 1, 2, 3. 3,200. Okay, so you don't have to write out any dividing. You don't have to write out any multiplying. Just practice those little tricks. Keep those notes handy and use them. Notice I'm saying them out loud, and if that helps, you do the same thing. Okay? Number 7, find the product of the quotient using mental math. Use the graph in example 4 to estimate the number of vehicles that crossed the George Washington Bridge in 2000. So let's go back to... Sorry, it takes me a second to go back. Let me take all these, go back to... And I won't, let's see. Okay, the George Washington Bridge, and we get to the graph. So here's the George Washington Bridge. There was 5.34 vehicles in the graph, and we take that times 10 million. So we're multiplying by a whole number, so we move the decimal to the right 7 places. There's 2 right there, so we add 5 zeros. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That red looks pretty cool on that, doesn't it? 53,400,000 vehicles. I just want to write on that because I think that looks really cool. Anyway, so we go. Sorry, I'm trying to get back to that example. Remember what we came up with? Move it 7 places. There it is. 53,400,000 vehicles crossed the George Washington Bridge. All right, so practice those little tricks. Ask if you're stuck, please, and we will see you next time.